If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to register for our newsletter to receive your monthly dose of inspiration, news about workshops, about festivals, about updates, about papers. And the link is going to be shared in the chat just now. And I'm very excited. I'm thrilled and hopeful to start on this very transformative journey together with you today. For multiple years, Bartels has actively supported the Shift to Power movement, pushing for more equal power relationships within development cooperation. To give an example, we have co-created the Power Awareness Tool together with our members and international constituencies that is extensively being used internationally. Last January, we also launched the Dream Paper on Shift to Power. But we are done talking and we are done dreaming. It's time for action. So in the upcoming years, Bartels will scale its efforts to accelerate the shift to power dynamics within international development cooperation by co-creating practical solutions for systems change. Building upon past work and working complementary with international initiatives from the Ringo Social Lab, from the Bond from the UK, ICSC, the International Civil Society Center, Civicus, Bartels is launching the Shift to Power Lab 2.0. And together with Bartels members and international constituencies, the Shift to Power Lab will work on 6 very concrete products, 6 very concrete actions that are going to be presented to you today. So what is the main objective of the session for today? The main objective of today is to provide you with concrete information about the Shift to Power Lab. But in particular, we would like to spark your interest to become an active member of the Shift to Power Lab. Let me briefly introduce to you the 6 actions. If we can go to the next slide, Roman. So 6 actions that are going to be presented to you today are action 1. We are going to develop recommendations for a more effective policy framework strengthening civil society. We already have a very progressive policy framework in the Netherlands, but at the same time, we also see ample room for improvement. So together with a group of development professionals, we are going to explore how we can strengthen the policy framework in order for it to become more effective, inclusive. Action 2, the Power Awareness Tool. Most of you, I think, know the Power Awareness Tool that has been created several years back by Bartels together with its members. It supports to bring the power dynamics within organizations and partnerships in particular to the surface. So we are going to iterate for a second version, an improved Power Awareness Tool. Action 2. Action 3, the Shift to Power Organizational 360 tool. CIMAVI is going to lead on the development of an Organizational 360 tool. I see it as an audit, but a 360 tool in order to get a better understanding of all the different opportunities to change power within organizational structures. Action 4, the Shift to Power Atlas, that is going to bring together all the variety and diversity of tools from the development community into one atlas. Very interesting. Action 5, a handbook for inclusive communication. We are going to explore how to make communications more ethical and more inclusive. And in order to combine all the different ideas, solutions, we are going to create a handbook. For example, that could also include a lexicon in order to support us in using different language in order for our language and eventually also our work to become more equal. And action 6, a research on the unintended and the intended effects of shift to power strategies. Now we're all talking about shift to power, localization. We're all working on shift to power through different experiments within our organizations, within our partnerships. But what is evidence showing us? There is not much research conducted internationally on topics related to shift to power, equal collaborations, and the potential impact of shift to power on our work. Very exciting. We have 6 actions, and in the next hour, the lead coordinators of these 6 actions are going to provide presentations about their action and inform you how you can become involved. But before we go to the plenary presentations, we would like to kindly ask you to go to Mentimeter first for some 5 minutes of a little bit fun and inspiration. So in the chat, you can find the details, how to go to Mentimeter, but also on your screen, you can find the details. You can even use a QR code to scan this QR code, and you will be brought directly via your phone to Mentimeter. But you can also use your laptop, of course, to type in menti.com and then use the code 99137975. So let's give it 1 minute for everybody to go to Menti. If you have any questions on how to use Menti, feel free to ask them, of course, in the chat. Then our team can support you to go to Menti, to onboard you on Menti. And otherwise, if you're not able to go to Menti, of course, we can use the chat always, and you can include your answer in the chat. But preferably, take some time to go to Menti, scan the QR code, or go to menti.com and use the code that has been put on the chat, or you can see on your screen. Okay, I see there are some issues with Menti, correct? You see the QR code again. Me too. Okay, let's see if we can fix it. Is it the same for everyone, or are the people able to enter Menti?
I think it's correct, and that the QR code is part of the current slide. So when we move on to the next slide, we will see a different image. So no worries.
Yes. So for those who are on Menti, you can see the question popping up. Let's start with the first question. And if you have any issues, please put them in the chat and we can facilitate it for you. Okay, it's working. If a fruit would represent your partnership with your international partners, what would that fruit be? So let's start with a creative question. With a fun question, if a fruit would represent the partnerships you're part of, working together with your international partners, wherever that might be, what would that fruit be? Pineapple, fruit salads, grapes, apples, mangoes. We see jackfruits, coconuts, we see many different fruits. If you're not on Menti, please fill in the fruit in the chat. You can also provide your answer in the chat if a fruit would represent your partnership with your international partners. What would that fruit be? I love fruits, many different fruits. I'm sure everybody loves some kind of food, but what would your international partnership look like if it would be a fruit? Perhaps we can ask somebody a question. Could somebody share something that that you shared? What fruit? Any volunteers? Otherwise, I can also pick someone, of course. No, okay, let's go to the pineapple. I'm curious. There are several people who entered pineapple, which is in the middle. Can somebody who entered pineapple say something about why you chose pineapple? It can also just be because you love pineapples. I mean, whatever you want to share, of course. Any pineapple volunteers? No pineapple volunteers. Okay.
I wrote avocado,
Yes.
and I think it's because it can take a long time to get ripe, and sometimes it gets ripe way too fast, and it goes bad unexpectedly, and not always great for the environment, but can taste really, really good if it, works out well.
Like that one. Thank you for sharing, Sandra. Thank you for sharing. Perhaps one more. Somebody else want to share why you've chosen for a fruit? Yes. Who's that? Stella?
Yes. I selected pineapple because, well, unripe pineapple, because it's a very sweet fruit when it's ripe. It's a bit prickly on the outside, but if you eat it when it's still unripe, it can be very unpleasant and acidic.
Nice, I like it. Yeah, yeah. So partnerships need to be ripe in order for them to be successful. So what does that mean? How does that look like? Something that we're also going to accelerate through the Bartels Shift to Power Lab. Let's move on to the next question. A little bit more serious now. I need more practical guidance to operationalize the power shift in my organization and partnership or the partnerships I am part of. I need more practical guidance. So we are talking for quite some years already about shifting power and how to operationalize it, but do we need to get a little bit more practical guidance on then how do you put that in practice? You can also put your answer in the chat, of course, if you're not on Mentimeter. Yes, no, I see many yeses, 88%. So I need more practical guidance to operationalize the power shift in my organization and partnerships. It's basically also a fundamental assumption underneath the shift to power lab of Bartels, of course, because we are going to actually work on providing more practical guidance to operationalize shift to power through different actions. So this is a validation of what we are doing today and what we are going to do in the next months and years to come. So I'm very happy to see that most of us need support with practical guidance to actually shift power in organizations and in partnerships. We are going to hear more about how we are going to co-create 6 products today from our presenters. But I'm very happy to hear that most of us need more practical guidance, and something that I and we as Bartels see also internationally, that many development practitioners, they need practical tools in order to support them in the operationalization. There's a lot of tools out there, needs. I would be interested in hearing from those. It's not, it's because of the question. Okay, so there is a discussion going on in the chat. Gigi, do we want to pick out a question, or are we going to move on?
I think it's a very interesting question. So if anyone dares to to answer why they have chosen why they have answered no to this question, and Eva was interested to hear about those that did not choose to, or that selected no for this question.
Okay, so we do not want to put people on the spot, but if you feel comfortable to share why you've chosen no, then feel free to do so. If not, that's also fine. We will continue to our next question.
I choose no. It's more nuanced than really no. Of course, I'm interested in practical guidance, but what I'm looking for is more exchange in the actual use of practical guidance that might be already out there. No need to reinvent the wheel. Things like the NEAR framework or the START framework already out there. And how do we use it? How do we bring it into practice? So the exchange is what I'm looking for.
Nice, Jan, and very valid point, and something that also the action of the Shift to Power Atlas is going to explore, to build upon what is already out there and try to see how it can be effectively used in order to create more equal partnerships within our work. Okay, let's quickly move on to the next question. The biggest challenge I experienced to create more equal power dynamics is, so one challenge, and again, you can also put your answer in the chat if you're not using Mentimeter. Otherwise, please feel free to enter your answer in Mentimeter. The biggest challenge I experienced to create more equal power dynamics. I see capacity, structures. Time, lack of time. Expectations, bureaucracy, prejudice, systemic barriers, relates to structures, altering mindsets, relates to prejudice, funding structures, it's funding the status quo, complexity of full system, okay, different cultures. So what is your biggest challenge that you're experiencing? I'm sure we're all experiencing challenges on different levels. It's not an easy question, of course, because you experience most probably multiple challenges, but the biggest one you feel frustrated about. Okay, not even on the agenda. Commitment to action, bureaucracy, rigid minds, control, commitment to action. Well, I think this provides a very comprehensive picture of the challenges related to shifting power and creating more equal power dynamics and partnerships within international development cooperation. It touches upon the diversity, the holisticness of the challenges that we are experiencing, but also the opportunities and the solutions that we need to find in order to accelerate systems change. Systems change, in order to work on systems change, we need to work on a variety of levels. And I think this overview of the challenges that are being experienced on so many different levels provides a very good picture of the importance to work on a systemic level and to work on a variety of actions. Hence also our decision to focus on 6 actions under the Partial Shift to Power Lab, focusing on lobby, focusing on tool development, communications and research, at least to facilitate the comprehensiveness of the challenges that are being experienced. So thanks everybody for sharing, and I'm sure we will touch upon this moving on today further in our session. Let's go on to the final question, and then we will kickstart with the presentations. The final question. The first thing I would do if I could change the power imbalance in the sector would be, so we all wrote down our biggest challenge, and let's say if you wake up tomorrow morning and you would have all the opportunities, all the financial resources, all the partnerships, everything that you could dream of in the world, the first thing that you would do coming out of bed in order to create more equal power dynamics and partnerships within the sector, what would that be? If you would have the means, the opportunities to do so. Or to phrase it differently, the first thing you would like to see changed. Mindsets of people, okay? Many people are thinking. What is the first thing you would like to see changed? Fund locally, I think that relates to providing financial resources to community-based local organizations, but it can also be about community philanthropy, of course, finding the strength of the community in order to support local giving and local civil society, ownership, sensitization, direct funding. There is only direct funding, only 3% of all the international aid going to local civil society organizations. So what happens with the rest? Question mark. Very good point. Expand it to other realms. What else do we have? Mutually, sensitization, equal funding, governance, change in decision making, talk to donors, joint ownership. Well, the beautiful thing again about all these outcomes, they all relate to one of the 6 actions that are going to be presented today. The funding relates to, for example, the different tools that are going to be developed and going to be presented to you today. It also relates to providing recommendations to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the new policy framework. Governance relates to the 360 tool. What kind of governance do we need to have in place in order to facilitate more equal partnerships? So very beautiful answers, and stick to them. Try to explore how you can hold on to this particular action or to this particular conclusion of yourself, and how it can be linked and translate it to one of the 6 actions that are going to be presented today to you. So thank you very much for participating in Mentimeter, and let's quickly move on to the most important part of today, the presentations of the 6 actions. And it's important to highlight that every action has a lead coordinator. There is a budget available for every action, and every action is self-organized. And today, the different leads are going to present the context of that action. And they're all looking for team members. So for you to participate and to support them and co-create the products under these 6 actions. The lead coordinators are going to pitch their actions. And after every pitch, we will have time for questions and feedback from the audience. So we will keep it to a plenary session today. And we will have 6 presentations. And basically, I will facilitate a Q&A session after every presentation. And then we will hope to be finished by within 1 hour time. So we hope that everyone is able to stick for 1 more hour. The next hour, the 6 actions are going to be presented. And I'm very much excited, enthusiastic to hear more about the 6 actions. And yeah, let's start. Let's just start with the first one. The first action is going to be presented by Koos, who is replacing the lead coordinator Heinz today. And Koos is the manager of lobby at Partos. And Koos, can I give you the word? And also for my colleagues, perhaps somebody can make Koos also a co-host. Thank you. And the word is to you.
Wow, co-host even. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Alexander. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work stream, let's call it that way, about the policy framework. And a short introduction on that is that, as you probably know, we have a quite, well, let's say progressive policy framework for strengthening civil society in developing countries in the Netherlands, and also compared to other countries, quite straightforward in that it focuses on well, the important themes more than and on policy issues, etc., instead of service delivery. But what we notice is that while the objectives of the policy framework are quite progressive, in practice it's not always as progressive as we would expect it to be, to put it mildly. So this is a topic in the current partnerships where we try to influence and try to find workable solutions for the problems your organizations meet in and more importantly our local partners or the local organizations meet in working in this partnership. But what we want to do in this work stream is identify how, if the objectives are strengthening civil society in developing countries, how the framework should look compared to the current framework. So what we will do is elaborate on what we know already and what came up out of the current discussions already, but also we will start interviews of the current, start with interviews of the current partnerships, especially the Southern-led partnerships, on what they have to deal with and how it would look better and workable for them meeting the objectives the framework states. And if you want to join with that and well, help us with developing this, then you're more than welcome. In the end, the outcomes of this this work stream will also be part of the broader or help develop the broader lobby activities of Partos towards the new framework. So that lobby will not only be the shift to power discussion, but will be broader, also about enough budget, thematic focus, geographical focus, etc., etc. But it will be part of the of what we bring to the table to both the ministry and the parliament at the later stage. And if there are questions or anything, is it something you would want to have now, Alexander, or?
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Koos, for the presentation, for the introduction. So this particular action focuses on lobby and trying to influence the donor policies of a very important big international donor, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with whom we also aim to collaborate with on this particular action. So there are also a few people part of this action already. Marijke Priester, an independent consultant, Mirjam Krijnen from AIDS-Fonds, Paul van den Berg from Cordate, Esther Meester from Wilde Ganzen, and Moses Isoba from the Uganda NGO Forum, Heinz Grein from Partels, and Koos de Bruin, of course, who presented this particular action. So perhaps I can give everyone 30 seconds time or 1 minute time to digest what you've heard and come up with questions or perhaps also some advice or thoughts, whatever you have, and put them in the chat. We will not go through all the questions and all the thoughts and ideas, but we have our chat moderator today, this morning, Gigi, who is going to support us with moderating the chat. But it's always helpful to give yourself a little bit time to reflect. So let's do that for 1 minute and put your ideas, questions to Koos and his team in the chat.
In the meantime, there is a relevant question, or actually a comment shared in the chat, that it would be helpful for each of the 6 working groups to share more about how the participants could help and the type of work that can be done, time needed, time span, expertise needed, etc., etc. Also minding that we're in a initial phase, so that might be that we're still open for each way in which this working group can develop.
Maybe Heinz can say something about that.
Yes.
Right. Yes, with regard to this particular group, what we have in mind is, because to have an effective lobby, you need a core team that is ready to spend a lot of time on this and also to develop their own expertise. So that core team will be limited. But next to that, we would like to have a larger group, which we call a sounding board group, to which the core team will report from time to time and get feedback about the ideas that they have developed. And developing the ideas will be with many stakeholders. So there will be stakeholders, there will be people from the ministry, there will be many NGOs, there will be CSOs, there will be organizations from the south, organizations from the north. From time to time, I think every 3 months, we will call together the sounding board group, and then the core group will report and get feedback. That's the way we intend to operate. About the length of time that we have in mind, well, the new policy, if there's going to be a new policy, it will start, it will be launched in 2025. So I think that this initiative will last at least until a new policy is going to be in place. So this is really a long-term, it's going to be a long-term effort.
Thank you, Heinz, and also for sharing the timeline. Indeed, we are starting in time, and we would like to co-create the recommendations together with you, together with our partner, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and explore how we can support the effectiveness of the policy framework. So it's a great initiative, very exciting. There will be a core group and a sounding board, like Heinz just shared, and we're looking for participants of the sounding board in order to support to create a better and a more effective policy framework. And then Jan is asking, how will the recommendations to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs build on the practical experience discussed and developed in other groups? A very relevant point. As part of also the Partels learning activities, there are a lot of recommendations coming out of the a strategic partnership lab. We also have working groups working already on the financial accountability system of the strategic partnerships, on the PMEL accountability systems. So perhaps Koos and Heinz, how will all this knowledge that is already being generated and recommendations already being shared be integrated in this particular work stream?
Well, I think that's a beautiful question, because it addresses exactly why we established, why we launched this new Shift the Power Lab 2.0. Because what we saw was that there were many initiatives that were all somehow related to Shift the Power, but they were not really interlinked. So that's why we decided to launch this new initiative with those 6 actions. And the idea is that we will establish cross linkages between those different actions that in the past used to develop a little bit too much like silos, we saw. So by bringing them now together in one Shift the Power Lab, which will also have a steering committee, we will make sure that there will be cross linkages between all these different initiatives.
Thank you, Heinz. Then we have questions from Jobin. Is the MFA Ministry of Foreign Affairs also funding the advice? Heinz.
No, they are not. Well, they are supporting the whole innovation platform of Partos, of course, but they're not funding this specific action in an isolated way, no.
So then the question relates to what is the independence of the advice? I think we have there is a core group consisting out of diverse representatives from development cooperation, and then the sounding board. We want to make it as inclusive as possible for them to lead this process and work together with the lobby team of Partos and the Dutch constituency, civil society constituency, in order eventually to come up with a well thought through, comprehensive and holistic recommendations and independent advice to the ministry. But a good point, Jobin. It relates to also a general thought, important to ensure that there is a balanced representation of Global South, Global North organizations in the sounding board. How are we going to make sure to for this process to be inclusive and a sounding board, Koos and Heinz?
Well, we just hope that there will be northern as well as southern organizations willing to join the sounding board. So that's important. So we don't want to exclude anyone, but we hope that from both sides we'll have many participants being interested in being part of this.
Amazing. And yeah, please feel free to think about to become a member of the sounding boards. There are many of us working under one of the financial grants of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One of the biggest one is the strategic partnership, the strengthening civil society policy framework, sometimes called the strategic partnerships. We are all experiencing many opportunities given through and provided with the strategic partnerships, but at the same time also the challenges. And we would like to explore how we can be smart in trying to mitigate the risks for a new policy framework and for it to become even more progressive globally. So feel free to think about it, but in particular also to join the sounding board. For now, let's quickly move on to the next action that is going to present it to you by Heinz, who is leading the development of the Power Awareness Tool. Heinz is an independent consultant working for Partos for many years, and he was also the lead consultant in the development of the Power Awareness Tool 2 years back, that is currently being extensively used internationally. So Heinz, take it away.
Thank you, Alexander. Yes, I was part of the team that developed the Power Awareness Tool in the year 2019. And in this group of participants, I already saw several other people who also have been part of this team. The Power Awareness Tool was launched by Partos early 2020, just before the COVID outbreak. And the reason why we developed the tool, because it was realized that power is a rather abstract, not very tangible concept, and it doesn't come in small packages that you can evenly distribute. So if you want to shift power, what does it actually mean? So we were looking for a tool. We developed the power awareness tool to make power less abstract, more visible. And as a result, it becomes also easier to discuss about power and to change things in a partnership. So the power awareness tool focuses actually on two important questions. The first question is, what are the important decisions that are being taken in a particular partnership? And the second question is that for each of those important decisions, how is each of the partners involved in these decisions? At what level? That is actually the core of the power awareness tool. And we know that from quite a number of organizations that they have been using the power awareness tool. We don't know exactly to what extent or whether they do that on a regular basis. But we don't have a complete picture of organizations, because organizations don't have the habit to inform us when they decide to start using the tool. So what we want to do now until the end of this year is that we want to evaluate the effectiveness of the power awareness tool. Does it really have the type of effect that we hope, that partners will discuss power and that it becomes easier to talk about possible solutions to get towards better balanced power relationships. So what we need are, well, first we need people who have experience with using the power awareness tool. With them, we would like to have a series of focus group discussions just to really see, how have you been using the tool and has it been effective also in establishing more balanced power relations in your partnerships. And of course, subsequently, on the basis of these findings, we will engage in further developing the tool. And for that part, we would also people who have not used the tool, but who are interested in using the tool in the future are very much welcome to join and to co-develop and test the upgraded version of the tool. And the aim is that by the end of this year that we will have a new upgrade of the power awareness tool. So I would ask you to please join. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heinz, and very exciting action as well that focuses on the development of a tool, a very concrete tool to be used in your organization, in your partnership. And we're looking for team members. Heinz is looking for team members to join the development of this tool. There is a budget available. We can experiment with a variety of features with the tool, online, offline, making it more accessible to a broader constituency. A question, how much time dedication do you foresee from Eva?
Well, I think from those who would like to share their experiences, we are just talking about one, maybe two, participating in one or two focus group discussions. So that is not very much time, but it will really be very valuable for us to know about your experiences and also about your ideas about how the tool can be improved. About the second part, about co-developing the tool, that is a bit harder to predict because we don't know exactly, what kind of changes are needed. They can be big, they can be small, they can be more focused on IT. One thing that we definitely would like to do is that the upgraded version, we would also like to test it. And those organizations that are interested in testing the tool, they have to count on some, more hours of work and also more involvement of their partners in this process. The testing is very important because also with the version of the current version of the tool, we tested it, and several people in this group of participants sitting in our meeting now have been involved in testing the tool with their organizations. So that is a bit more time consuming because it's not only testing, the test also needs to be evaluated. So that is really for the people who are really very much interested in being part of the development team.
Great, thank you, Heinz. And yeah, you can be involved in different ways, basically, depending on your own capacity, depending on your own availability, and to develop, depending on the different phases of the tool development. But there is a working group being formed who is going to lead the development of this this tool. And feel free to join the further development of the power awareness tool. I've used it extensively in the past when I was working for AIDS funds. It has significantly helped us to bring power dynamics to the surface and translate it to concrete actions on how to facilitate more equal partnerships. So I'm very curious to see where we are heading to with this second version. Great, we already have Eva who is willing to participate. We will provide you with the opportunity to register for the 6 working groups after the presentations of today. But great if you already can share your interest in the chat. Feel free to do so. It will also inspire others to join as we move on to the next presentation. Action 3, thank you, Hans. Action 3 is going to be presented by Susan Wilkinson from Simavi. I must say that I was very enthusiastic when I heard the proposal, the idea from Simavi, from Susan, to develop a 360 organizational audit tool. And Susan, I would like to give you the word and blow us away with your fantastic idea.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Super. And can you see my screen?
Yeah, and if you click on the presentation mode, that would be better.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, as Alex said, I'm Susan Wilkinson. I'm with Simavi, and I have the privilege of being part of an organization and team who's really committed to shift the power. We've got in place a vision, and we're all working together in our various units and circles to make this happen. And as Alex said, we really had an idea that we're working on, because what we're seeing around us is there's a lot of commitments in place to shift the power. And in particular, we're really looking at these commitments about changing how we partner. So new partnership models and working in ways which are more fair and equitable. And so we realized that, you know, Simavi has a new partnership policy in place, but we're probably not the only ones. And then also we see that actions are in motion. I mean, many organizations have just started new strategic partnerships or other types of projects and programs, and they're really trying it out and trying to think about how do we start working differently with our national partners in the global South. So things are in motion, but what we're realizing is really missing is some sort of tools that really help us to sort of monitor or gauge our own processes, you know, for the purpose of making sure that we keep on track and can really accelerate our progress. So we're looking at this internally. We have a new partnership policy. We're starting to roll it out, and we're trying to figure out how do we sort of see how we're doing. And we realized we're probably not the only ones facing this issue. So this is really an invitation, and we're looking around to see who else would like to join us, because we don't want to do this alone.
Susan?
Yep.
We can't see the different slides. We can see the PowerPoint presentation, but we're not able to see. I'm sure you're moving through the different slides, but we are also not able to see you in the video.
Would you like to see me, Alex?
Just so you know.
Okay. Do you mind if we continue just like this without seeing me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, cool. And so really then what we see the problem is we're really missing a tool, some sort of monitoring tool. And so our solution then is, well, how do we develop a tool, and how do we develop some sort of gauge so that we know how we're doing in terms of working more equitably as a Northern INGO with Southern partners? And I want to pick up on something that actually Jan said, is around, hey, there's lots already out there. Let's not reinvent the wheel. And so already we've looked around there and we've seen, well, what's out there? What are sort of different ways or options to gauge our progress and to come up with a set of markers? And so we've, just to make it sort of real, we found 2 examples. And one is this spectrum idea, that you gauge things along a spectrum. And so this one here is, some of you are familiar with it. It's about gender mainstreaming and gender transformation. So you have the idea of something on the left-hand side here, which is not an ideal situation. So something that's gender harmful. And then you move along the scale around improvement to gender neutral, gender sensitive, gender empowering, Susan, and gender transformative.
We can't see your slides.
Okay. Well,
so we can't see the spectrum.
Okay, well, I don't know how to solve that problem. So
okay,
we're just going to have to listen, I guess. And then the other idea is another way to do this is gauging our progress by not looking at a spectrum, by taking the organization and looking at different sets of behavior within an organization. So this is called the quadrant model. So people who do DEI work, they, for example, have used this model. So they look at one box, what's going on in terms of the organization's policies, so formal stuff. And also a second box is looking at what's going on in terms of systems and structures, also formal. And then two other boxes, the third and the fourth quadrant, are more behaviors, how staff are behaving, and then also their attitudes and values. So really that's one of the things we're looking at, is how do we figure out what kind of markers we're going to look at to work from not sort of equitable and fair partnerships in relations to something that's more fair and equitable. And so our particular solution, as Alex mentioned, is this idea of a 360-degree tool. So that's the idea that it's not just ourselves as Samavi or other INGOs looking at how we're doing in terms of shifting the power, but really involving other stakeholders and primarily the partners that we work with to have their own view and opinion on how we're doing. And so, and then the idea is to also be part of gauging and sort of scoring that, and then also working together with different as a stakeholder group to figure out, well, what does this mean in terms of where we're doing well and where we're not doing so well and where we might want to improve. And then specifically in terms of an ask, what are we asking of you? Well, really, we're really envisioning, and we're open to changing this, but we're sort of really envisioning this idea of this being sort of a community of practice. And the idea there is that we see about 5 different steps in developing this tool. And our expectation is not that everyone's involved in every step along the way, but really contribute around what interests you and where you think you can add value. So the first step is really around developing a gauge. That's the first thing we need to do. And we've given a couple examples. We could do it as a spectrum, we could do it as a quadrant, and there's about 6 or 7 other sort of various tools and starts out there. You know, what can we draw on and use? And then the second thing is, once we have a measure, then we really have to develop a simple tool that organizations can use. So something that's not too onerous, not too cumbersome, and that we as INGOs and our national partners can use and score on. And then third, and this is where the big bulge is we're looking for organizations who'd be really interested in pilot testing this with us. Okay, so it's, so here we'd want probably, you know, ideally, I think it'd be great if we had about 5 or 6 organizations who your Netherlands-based teams and also your Southern teams would be willing to pilot test this tool and to feed back to us how it's going, to really help us refine and finalize it. And then the last step is really packaging and rolling this out so it's shared more widely within the sector. And that could be within Partos or beyond. And as Alex said, Partos has generously given us a bit of a budget to do this, so there's scope to do something really interesting there. Yeah, and then just to finalize, there's sort of those are the different steps of the tool, and really what our ask is we actually really have a dilemma, and this is what I want to people to really weigh in on, is how do we really frame partnership? For those of you who know Samavi, we're an organization, we don't have an operational model. So we don't have Samavi field teams or field offices per se, but we work with national partners. And so we're sort of wondering, do we need to do this together with others who are like us? Or is it also to develop some sort of tool like this, which is more universal and serviceable to many other Dutch INGOs who have an operational model and who have field teams? And that's a little bit of a dilemma for us, sort of how sort of agile or how this tool could travel or not, sort of how specific or how general it could be. We're also looking for people who are willing to do this sort of in a fun and a creative way, and also to do it in a way that's really inclusive, involving not only your Dutch-based colleagues, but your Southern partners as well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much, Susan. And I've shared a screen from my laptop to make the call to action visible.
Thanks for
So,
that.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Welcome. What are we looking for? So a 360 organizational tool with, which is very exciting, of course. I think we would all value to have such a tool present within our organization in order to strengthen our consciousness about partnerships, about power, and how to translate that into the practical organizational structures we're all part of, whether that's communications, marketing, or any other department. Any questions to Susan? Any thoughts, any ideas? A brief moment for reflection. So we are going to share the presentation afterwards with you, so you can have a look at it more extensively in your own time. Question for Susan. Okay, question for Susan and Heinz. Is there an expectation that the Power Awareness tool and this Organizational 360 tool speak to each other? Susan.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I would think so. I mean, my imagination is a lot of these tools, this suite of 6 which Partos is developing, and as Jan has indicated, you know, there's lots of others doing stuff too. I would imagine that there's some sort of harmonization and as we go, and there's a real value in pulling these together and linking them. So, you know, I think, yes, we have to be aware that we don't duplicate and we see how we complement.
Great. Okay. Another question from Jan. How do you plan to deal with the organizational diversity among Northern CSOs? As you said, with or without country offices?
That's, yeah, thanks, Jan, for weighing in on that. And I sort of put it out there as a dilemma. And I guess how I want to deal with it is I would like others, like you and others, to really sort of think together about how we do this, because that's the big question for us, sort of how broad or universal can this be, or do we almost need sort of two more customized tools? And I think that's the big dilemma and a first sort of grapple. I would imagine that perhaps the spectrum or the markers might be able to be the same, but maybe the tool different, I don't know. And I think that's sort of the thing we need to sort out.
Yeah.
So join in and help me figure that out, please.
Yes. So join Susan for the 360 tool. She's looking for participants, members to co-create this tool. Very exciting process. I think it's a very unique tool that can be actively used and can actually facilitate transformative change within organizations. We need to move on. Amanda, apologies. We have 30 minutes left and 3 presentations still to hear. Let's quickly move on. Keep your presentation short, within 5 minutes for the next one. I think that's the Atlas. So for the Atlas, we have the Hunger Project together with Butterfly Works and the Movement for Community-Led Development, who are going to share something about the Atlas, Shift to Power Atlas. Please take it away, Catherine.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm the Hunger Project, and I'm here today with my colleague Meryl from Butterfly Works to present the Shift to Power Atlas. Next slide, please. So the context for this is that over the past 2 years, there was actually a working group for community-led development and human-centered design, which had regular sessions to exchange knowledge and join forces to promote community-led and human-centered methods in international development. And I think maybe some of you here have participated in this working group in the past. There we shared tools, methodologies, and strategic initiatives relevant to community-led development and human-centered design. And you can see some of the examples that we shared in the past here on the PowerPoint slide. And of course, we also had brainstorms and discussions about various topics regarding challenges and shift to power, challenges in your work. Next slide, please. So it became clear from these sessions that many tools and knowledge products are being developed and tested by different organizations to facilitate more equal partnerships with within international development cooperation. But the problem is that it's sometimes difficult to navigate these products. It can be hard to know where to find them. There's often little visibility outside your own organization. And it also can be difficult to know which one would work best in your own professional environment as well. Next slide. So our proposed solution is a Shift the Power Atlas. And we really hope that this will go far beyond just a sort of standard toolbox, but it'll really help to identify the principles, guidelines, and the tools that work well and what can be learned from them. So you can see here the why, which is the key principles of community-led development and human-centered design. The what is an overview or database of tools, and the how is a guide to help you find, select, and use the right tools for your project or organization. And then I think Meryl will now discuss the Maro board that we put together for this session.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and good to be here. Yeah, so we sort of, the Atlas is still very much a concept, and yeah, we made sort of a starting point, but we really look for a group who want to co-create this together with us. So we're here at the starting point of this working group, and yeah, to see what is the interest of people who want to join us in this group. And then what we propose is a next session where we actually co-create more detailed what should the Atlas do, and what is the time frame, what can everybody participate, contribute to our group, and then that we together start co-designing and prototyping the Atlas, and then our target is to be able to launch a prototype at the Innovation Festival in October. And in order to do that, we had already set up a Miro board, which, well, we can drop the link in the chat. We can also plan a next session where we go much more into it, because we would really like to get started by hearing what people would like to get out of such an Atlas, and what can you bring to this group. So how much time do you have available, and how much resources, and already all the tools and methods and toolbox and yeah, and links that you have that we can start building on would be really helpful. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Catherine and Merel. Again, also a very exciting tool, an atlas that is going to aspire to bring together all the key resources and the tools that have been already developed, and provide a good overview of how to use them in one single place in the atlas. So the request is to join a working group. There will be a brainstorm session organized to kickstart that process. Moving forward from June onwards. Eva is saying Atlas sounds really useful. It sounds like something that requires some tech specialists to make it happen. Is that something that is already resourced?
Well, there is, like for the other groups, there is a budget. We want to know first what people really need to know, how technically complicated it has to be. But yeah, there is budget to set something up. And not a specialist has been resourced yet.
Yeah, so there is budget available to do stuff, basically, but we have not already contracted somebody to do stuff, because we first need to have the brainstorm. Very exciting, an atlas trying to bring together everything. So if you're interested, if you are using within your organization, within your partnership, a variety of tools that might be relevant, please feel free to join this working group, to share your experiences, and to participate in the development of the Atlas that is going to be useful not only for yourself, not only for the Partos constituency, but for the international development constituency. So it's a very exciting international initiative, the Atlas, that is going to help all of us to navigate the different tools and resources that are out there in order to support us to do our work a little bit better. Okay. Let's see, the atlas sounds helpful. A suggestion is that there is also resources available to continue updating it, to keep it being useful also after launching it. Yeah, definitely, very good point. And those resources are going to be made available to keep on updating the atlas tool. We will take it into account. And Jan is saying, our focus in the presentation so far seems to be a lot on tools. To what extent can we also think about attitude recommendations, values required to make? I think that is also part of the tools. If you think about the tool on the power awareness tool, it's all about the different mindsets, the mind models also that we have. I think the tool of Susan, the 360 organizational tool, it's also about mindsets. I think she presented the culture and the attitudes, which should be part of it. Within the atlas, we will also capture and combine tools that focus on attitudes and mindsets. So very good point, and good to be good to integrate this particular focus on mindsets, culture, attitudes in the tool development as well. Okay, let's quickly move on. So if you have any interest to this working group, think about it, reflect on it. Now we are going to focus on working group or action 5. And Sarah, the communications manager of Partos, is going to present action 5. Sarah, can I give you the word?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we started last month, in fact, with a community of practice on inclusive communication. And we do this together with the Expertise Center of Humanitarian Communication. And the aim of this community is to explore in which ways we can make our communication more ethical, more just in all senses, more inclusive. So not only through the stories we tell or the words and the images we use, but also reflecting on the ways we work together with our international partners and the communities involved. So also the working methods, let's say. And yeah, we think that's very necessary to work on this and learn about narratives and inclusive communications to improve the current language used and images used. So we aspire to create together with this community more, a handbook for inclusive communication and organized learning and innovation sessions. I think the goals of this community is very close to the Shift to Power lab goals, but more focused on the language and narrative side. So this community now there are like 36 organizations dedicated to this community, and it's a diverse group of Partos members, but also international partners and universities included. And we want to build on the work of Bond and the Belgian colleagues on their narrative and language work. So there are some issues that we want to explore. Also, it's kind of a difficulty, like how do we ensure inclusiveness in our design of this community? And how do we involve our partners and communities, which are difficult for Partos to approach? So that would also be a question to you all guys to reflect on that issue. So how do we deal also with the power relations, the language and translation issues? How do we ensure that history won't repeat itself, that we focus on words, but don't address the underlying unequal relations and ethnocentrism? So these are all issues we want to explore with this community. And there are some activities coming up. So the Expertise Center of Humanitarian Communication is working on a sort of starting document, based on the past, but it gives us perspective for the future actions. And this community will reflect on it at the end of May. And then afterwards, we will organize broader events where we will be focusing on the history and power relations in the communication practices. So other topics we will explore are language and imagery, discourse and narratives, the production of inclusive storytelling, and participatory forms of community-led communication. And yeah, what are we searching for? Well, for all these events, we would like best practices, worst practices also to learn from. We want speakers who can reflect on some of the topics. We are searching for feedback on the handbook that we will be making. I think it will be in October, November, then the handbook will be in concept list ready. So then we need some organization to reflect on it. We hope to involve more international partners also to deepen the debates and insights. Let me see if I don't want to forget to mention the Ringo Social Lab. There are like 3 participants of our community that are focusing on creating a sort of app like Grammarly, but more on the inclusive language side. So they are also searching for specialists on communication and technology who can participate in their prototype developing. I think that Ellen is also here, and Moses, I think, and Deborah, they could elaborate on this also. So I'm not sure if I explained it.
You've captured everything. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, very comprehensive, and much is happening under this particular action, and it focuses significantly on creating the more ethical and inclusive communication models for development cooperation that can be used by your communications department, marketing department, fundraising department, programs department, basically all the departments. It's a collective responsibility that we have to be mindful about not only our attitudes, but how we translate our mindset and attitudes into the language that we use. So if you feel interested, if you feel energized about focusing on shift of power related to communications, feel free to join the very active group of Sarah. There are different ways you can be involved, like Sarah already explained. And share your interest within the chat or afterwards in the link that we are going to share with you. Linda Den Boef is already sharing her interest, so that's great. Thank you, Linda. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them to put them in the chat, and then we will come back to you afterwards. But now we need to move on to our next and final presenter, which is Lau from the Radboud University Nijmegen, who is going to share with us the very exciting focus on the research on the intended and unintended effects of shift to power strategies. So Lau, can I give you the word for presentation?
Okay, thanks. Can I upload my presentation as well? I suppose I can, isn't it? You can see it now.
Yes.
Okay, good. It's a bit strange actually to be the last one presenting, because I think that what I'm going to present is something that links up very closely to a lot of the actions that have been discussed already, and maybe not only links up, but actually feed into. So let's move on. I mean, you can see this is not only my own idea, but this is an idea that came up in discussing it with a lot of my colleagues from different universities in the south and in the north. Maybe you recognize some of the names below. My name is Lau Schulpe. I'm working at Radboud University as a lecturer and researcher. So I've learned in my connection with Alexander that it's sometimes very good to listen to him. So I decided to simply follow his guideline and start with what is the problem. Now, the problem, as you all know, and we have been discussing that, so I don't need too many words for that, is in short, the power imbalances in North-South relationships. But more specifically for us, the problem is actually that there is a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of action about it, but there's little understanding of the impact. Of those initiatives that have been undertaken already, either from the south or from the north, by different organizations, whether INGOs or civil society organizations or whatever you want to call them, in tackling these imbalances. And then, of course, we need a solution for that problem. And don't blame me. I'm a researcher. We are all researchers. So don't blame me with coming up with a research project. But not just any research project. It's actually a research project that investigates very concrete initiatives that have been undertaken and are being undertaken with the aim of tackling those power imbalances. So we ask ourselves a very simple question: what works and what does not in shifting power? And what explains why it works or does not work? It is a research project that includes Shift the Power initiatives, or STP initiatives, as we love abbreviations in this sector. So we came up with an STP initiative that includes those initiatives undertaken by both INGOs or civil society organizations in the South. That brings together researchers from both North and South, as you have seen. That starts small, but I do hope, and we all hope, that we will be able to actually expand at a later stage. That starts with two different things at the same time. With, on the one hand, mapping these STP initiatives from either INGOs or local civil society organizations. And at the same time, by studying already 4 of those initiatives in order to test our approach to see whether it works or not. And it is a research project that seeks to have a very concrete contribution to actually making those power imbalances disappear, in trying to guide this sector in what to do and also maybe what not to do. So why is that relevant for you? Now, in general, of course, it's a contribution to evidence-based working, and I think that's always a good idea. And of course, you can imagine all the other things that are here on this slide, because it gives you access to the latest academic knowledge. It gives you an overview and analysis of the existing STP initiatives. It gives you an in-depth understanding of what works and what not, and why it works. And it gives you an understanding of the strategic implications of these findings. So what do we want from you? Now, the starting point is very simple, and that holds for all the actions that have been discussed up to now. We can't do this on our own. We simply need you. So we need you to either join a sounding board group of both Northern and Southern practitioners to help us in going over key strategic choices that have to be made in this research, whether it's on focus, on approaches, on methodology, on objectives. We need you to share information about ongoing initiatives to balance that power. And that includes your own initiatives, and to bring us in contact with those people that are very well known with them. We need you to advise us on translating results of our studies into practicable solutions to act, and you could say, as a translator for your own organization. And we need you to help us find ways to obtain input, collaboration, and funding for this initiative, for this idea. Now, very simple, you can contact us simply by sending me an email. Also, if you want any more information about this. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Lau, for this very concrete presentation.
Okay.
To the
How
point.
do I get out of here?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Let's open up the floor for some questions, feedback, advice. So you have the opportunity to become part of a sounding board for an international group of researchers. I think it's a very unique research. It's a unique collaboration, international collaboration, that is going to seek evidence, the evidence that we all need in order to strengthen the actions, the other actions, but also to strengthen our work with evidence-based solutions. Any questions When do we start, Lau?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Okay. So there are different ways you can become part of the sounding board of this group of researchers. And please fill in any ideas, thoughts, questions you have to Lau or the other ones, the other actions in the chat. We still have 10 more minutes to go, so we come to basically the close of the session. Okay.
I must say, I'm very I'm very happy that Eva finds it really interesting. At least I hope that was concerning our initiative. I'm not quite sure about that.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
If there are any questions, I mean, even at a later stage, just send me an email. That's probably the best you can do.
When do you think the research will be ready, Lau?
First of all, that depends on when we start. Depends on how quick we find the 4 initiatives. Because again, we are starting with 2 things at the same time. So the collection, you could say, of all kinds of initiatives, the categorizing of them and trying to get a better understanding of them. And in the end, maybe make a selection out of them. And that will take a bit longer, probably. But we hope to start researching 4 very concrete initiatives very soon. That should take, I'm not quite sure, it depends a bit on the initiatives, of course, but that should take us about 2 or 3 months to come up with the first findings.
Great. Yeah, and perhaps it will be a very long-term research, and continuously there will be new results found. And we will
I would hope so.
Yeah, that's the intention. Professor Ellen Fowler is going to join the sounding board, Lau. And Ketra Koshi is saying, yes, I believe more research is needed to get into the nitty-gritty aspects of initiatives, where people being helped at the end are also truly represented in both in the research and in the tools initiatives developed. Okay, we need to quickly move on. There are several questions asked to you, Lau, so perhaps you can take them into account, and feel free, everyone, also to join this sounding board with where you will support an international group of researchers in order to conduct a very innovative and thought-provoking, I would say, groundbreaking research. For now,
Alexander, may I make one simple, very small comment?
Yeah.
I mean, the comments in the chat are correct.
Mm-hmm.
When I started my presentation, I said there's a clear link to many of the other actions that are actually undertaken here. We haven't discussed that yet with those actions, but we definitely need to do that, because I think, particularly for instance, with regard to the Atlas, there's a clear link, and it would be really stupid not to link up. So we're definitely going to do that.
Great, yeah, and that's why all these actions are brought together under one Shift to Power lab, and the lab is going to facilitate that interaction. Let's try to focus on that collaboration between the actions as well. Very good point, Lau, good question. So now we would like to start with the actual onboarding process. I mean, the title of today was onboarding, so let's do some onboarding to the extent it's possible, of course, and provide you with the opportunity to become part of one of the working groups or sounding boards. I would like to kindly ask you to reflect for 1 minute and think if you would like to become a member of one of the 6 actions, whether that's part of a sounding board or a working group. So do you want to become an active member of the Partals Shift to Power Lab is a question you might ask yourself. What action relates to your professional or personal interest? Think about it for 1 minute. And if you know which action you want to become part of now, then please fill in the details, your details, into the Google Doc that has been shared now by my colleague. You can enter the Google Doc and you see an overview of all the 6 actions, and please include your name, your organization, and your email address. And of course, those who need more time to think, very possible, no worries, you have the time. We will share the presentations and of course this link after our session today for you to share your interest on a later moment. At the same time, we do hope to start with working groups starting from June onwards. So in June, we would like to have the working groups or the sounding boards formed in order to kickstart the development of the processes, the different processes under the 6 actions. So let's give it a few more minutes for you to onboard yourself for those who already know. Go to the Google Docs and fill in your details. Take some time to think about it as well. You will be part of a broader trajectory, the part of Shift to Power Lab, and you will focus on one of the 6 actions, or if you want, you can become part of more actions, depending on your time and capacity. But do know that you will be part of creating and developing concrete solutions to shift power. So it's very exciting, I think. I would fill in my name under every action, but unfortunately, I only have 24 hours in a day. Question from Simavi: does each action has both a working group and a sounding board? No. Action 1 is looking for a sounding board. Action 6 is looking for a sounding board. And why? Because they already have a smaller working group who are guiding the process, and they will work together with the sounding board. So that's less active participation for 1 and 6, still active, but less active compared to what action 2, 3, 4, and 5 are looking for, which is more proactive, basically hands-on co-creation support from the working groups. So 1 and 6 sounding boards, 2 till 5 it's working groups. Think about it. We have 1 focusing on lobby, creating a new and influencing a very important donor and working together with a very important donor. 2 is a power awareness tool. 3 is an organizational audit tool. 4 is the Atlas. 5 is ethical inclusive communications, and 6 is a research. Definitely, there is a moment to subscribe on a later moment. You can definitely discuss it internally. There are different ways you can become involved. If you need more time to think, of course, very understandable. We are going to make all the presentations, the video as well, and the registration link for this particular file available after our sessions today. And you will have time until the end of May to register yourself for one of the working groups. And then in June, all the working groups will start with their first meeting, sounding board or working group. See, many people are including their names. Okay, let's finalize today's session. Very inspiring. We have come to the end of this first onboarding session of the Partos Shift to Power Lab. And on behalf of Partos, we would like to thank all the presenters of for their inspiring presentations. And of course, all the participants, you, for your participation. In terms of next steps, like I already shared, in the afternoon today, we have our second onboarding session, after which the working groups or the sounding boards will be formed. You still have time until the end of May to share your interest in this file. And from June onwards, we will start with the development of the 6 actions. So all the actions have their own budget, are self-organized, and you will work with your own mini project plan to develop concrete products, leading to hopefully systems change. We hope to celebrate the 6 actions at the Partos Innovation Festival on the 14th of October this year. So make sure to be there the 14th of October, the Partos Innovation Festival. For now, I would like to thank you very much. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter that you can find in the chat. So thank you very much. See you soon. And thank you for your time. Enjoy your day. See, everybody's very happy who's leaving, so that's good feedback. Thank you for the feedback. Feel free to provide also critical feedback. We love critical feedback. Make sure to share your interest in the Google Doc.